If you were to ask a sensible person who knew nothing about, who was not formally trained in economics,
Yes.
what do you think of this? They might reasonably conclude it's a form of fraud. And yet this is perfectly lawful.
Do all banks do this?
All banks do this.
British banks, American banks?
Every bank in the world that is regulated by a central bank is a fractional reserve institution.
Right, let me explore this fractional reserve idea, because when I first heard of it, it wasn't very long ago, it just blew my mind, right? So, okay, I go to a Islamic finance institute and I say, I want to buy a house. So presumably they will lend me money from deposits. So someone has excess surplus wealth and they want to keep that wealth safe, and they put it into that Islamic bank, HSBC, Oman, or whatever it may be. You're saying to me that it's not only the money, the deposits that pay for my mortgage. There's other money involved in that, and this money is what, just comes out of nowhere?
It is. You could literally say that it is created at the stroke of a keyboard click.
But why? Why does this exist?
So let's go back to gold in the 16th century. If you had some gold and you wanted to store it safely, you would go to your local goldsmith and you'd say, can you put this in your vault?
Okay.
And give me a piece of paper, a receipt that shows that I have put some gold with you. And he gives you put, let's say you weigh 5 pounds worth of gold and you put it in the vault. He gives you a piece of paper that says, I owe you 5 pounds of gold.
Right.
All well and good. Now you know that this is evidence that you own this. And it so happens that the goldsmith has a good standing in the community. Everybody respects him. They know he's an upstanding guy. He's a safe guy. And he's good for his word. So you can actually circulate this piece of paper in the economy as money, because it evidences that you actually own 5 pounds of gold, or you can have it divisible. He can give you 5 pieces that say, I owe you 1 pound.
Right.
Now, again, this is all very good, but at some point the goldsmith says, wait a minute, this guy who's deposited money with me never comes back to redeem his gold. So I could actually issue more pieces of paper than I actually have deposits. Now he's created a fractional reserve. Right. So the practice became that he would issue more receipts into the economy, and it was made legal. And eventually we saw institutions like Bank of England, which effectively codified this and institutionalized this process. So it was possible for a bank to maintain a reserve, but to issue more money than was actually stored in its vaults. And this is the origins of the fractional reserve system. Now, as long as the government found some way to regulate the amount of money that's in circulation, everybody believes this is all well and good. An increase of money supply in the economy means more credit creation, means more wealth creation, means more jobs, means more growth in the economy.
Yeah.
And we now have a situation where the controls are so loose that this financial economy has far outstripped the real economy. And every now and then there's a crash. Every now and then things get too impossible to control. And we have crashes like the 2007, 2008 crisis.
Yes.
And in such a case, you will see lines of people outside banks saying, no, something's gone wrong. I want my money back. In fact, we saw it very recently with Silicon Valley Bank. And this is a function of the fractional reserve system.
So this fractional reserve banking underpins all Islamic banking?
All banks, including Islamic.
Right. So what does that then mean for the Islamic quality of these products? Like, what's your argument about the Islamic quality of, say, an Amana Finance mortgage?
Yeah. There was a time that I felt if you're a practicing Muslim and you're ideologically aligned with your faith and you wanted to invest in a way that didn't compromise your principles, and you wanted to offer financial products to other Muslims and to people who wanted to invest and participate in the economy in a halal way, in an ethical way, whether or not they were Muslim. I used to think it was possible to do that. And we actually had a bunch of bankers who were working at places like Deutsche Bank, who were young, practicing Muslims, technically capable, ideologically aligned, and they were creating some very interesting product. But we never really stepped back to think, actually, what is the fundamental basis on which we are manufacturing these products? Because it's all very well that we've mastered the elements of fiqh al-mu'amalat, the jurisprudence of transactions, of commercial and financial transactions, so that we can create these complex contractual structures that we call mudaraba, musharaka, murabaha, and so on. And we have these contracts that we vetted by theologians for compliance with Sharia. And we say, yeah, this contract I'm using to finance the building of a house or financing the purchase of a home through a mortgage is Sharia compliant because the contracts are an ijara with a diminishing musharaka or some other combination. But we don't step back and think, hang on, what's the basis on which this bank is able to give money for the financing of this house? Basis is money creation through the fractional reserve system. So again, every time you deposit $1 in the bank and they can lend $10, they've created $9 new of new money, which is the definition of riba. Because you've created money from nothing or money out of money. That's an excess, that's a surplus. That's how riba is defined. So the entire banking system is by definition based on riba.
Wow.
And if you have Sharia compliant contractual structures on top of that foundation, you still have a non-compliant system. So as much as I tried to convince myself for many, many years, and this is a form of cognitive dissonance, that we can do this, we can do it better, and we can make it halal, actually Islamic banking is an oxymoron because you cannot be Islamic and be a bank, because a bank is a fractional reserve institution that creates money from nothing, which is riba.
So a person who today wants to purchase a house, a Muslim living in Britain who wants to purchase a house, are you saying that they should regard all Islamic banks, Islamic finance instruments, in the same way as a traditional high street bank, as a riba-based bank? And so these banks and these instruments are haram?
Well, here again, I demonstrate some cognitive dissonance, and it's very difficult for me to say that that is the case.
Yeah.
First of all, is there a viable alternative? Today, I don't believe that there is. Secondly, are there many Muslims working in the Islamic finance industry who are trying to develop a more wholesome product?
Yeah.
Not just halal, but tayyib. Not just permissible, but wholesome.
Right.
And the answer is yes, there are many Muslims that in that industry, and I also believe in supporting them to achieve those objectives.
So these Muslims are creating the equivalent financial products without the fractional reserve under the hood.
They're within the banks.
Yeah.
They still have fractional reserve under the hood.
Okay.
But there are many Muslims now who are creating new startup Islamic fintech firms,
right,
who are trying to create financial investment products and financial financing products, which are not just contractually to the letter of the law, but also within the spirit of the law, i.e. not based on a fractional reserve system.
Right.
But that's a very, very, very tiny minority. So I would say that we should, as Muslims, support the Islamic finance industry, but we should be very discerning about what we choose to support and choose to walk away from. Now, having said that, if I want to finance my house, I have very few alternatives. And even I have used an Islamic bank to get a mortgage because I felt that the alternative would be to go to a large high street bank who have no interest in or affinity with Muslims or the halal economy. So I would rather support those who do have an interest in that and are trying to move in the right direction. Unfortunately, again, it's cognitive dissonance. Unfortunately, I feel like in Topol, when the main character says, on the other hand, in my mind, I'm constantly trying to reconcile my actions with the reality of what's actually happening. And I used to champion the Islamic finance industry, particularly the Islamic banking industry, for a long time, for many years, until very, very recently. But I now feel that it's so stagnant, it's so unwilling to change from the inside, and I've tried to change it from the inside,
right,
that I can no longer hand on heart say that I can continue to support the Islamic banking industry. And I would like the Islamic finance industry more widely to move towards its ideals of a risk-sharing, real economy-based services industry. Now, we're a long, long way from that. And I think a lot of what young entrepreneurs are doing now to create fintech companies, Islamic fintech companies, is a good step towards that ultimate aim.